Nick Saban's exit impact Utah football, and Brant Kuithe is back on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen every single day. We are available on all platforms, including YouTube and wherever you may get your podcasts. If this is your first time listening to our show, make sure you like and subscribe. Love interacting with all of you in the YouTube comments, and you can follow our show on Twitter at Locked On Utes. Today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. You can make every moment more. Right now, new customers get 150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. My name is JT Wistrcill, former intern inside the University of Utah Athletic Department. Excited to be joined on today's show by Drake Toll of Locked On Baylor.
Are you excited?
I am. I said Locked On Baylor at first too. So even you got me rattled already. Literally just starting out of the gate a little bit. I almost misintroduced you wrong. So always fun having you along. And I know all of the Utah fans.
Is it always fun? I don't know if your listeners would agree.
I always have a blast with you on. I think difference of opinion can be a fantastic thing, despite what the internet may tell you in this year. And it's going to be a fun show talking about where Utah football ranks in the top 25 of way too early lists. We're seeing them pop up there at the end. Brant Kuithe coming back is huge news, but I really want to start with something overall that's speaks to the position that Utah football is in. And I think it's something that's going on in all of college football right now. And that's Nick Saban exiting Alabama. He is retiring, going to move into a role. I think it's going to end up being College Game Day, but that's a conversation for another podcast. But Nick Saban, this is an opportunity. How it affects Utah is, let's see what happens with Alabama, right? Alabama should continue to be one of the top 15, top 10, probably even top 5 teams in college football. But there is a chance they could potentially slide back just because we have seen wrong coaching hires, and it is not easy to follow up the GOAT, and that is exactly what I think Nick Saban is. Still crazy the timing of him and Belichick retiring so close to each other too. But when you're talking about why this Utah team could be in position to take a step forward, to me, if Alabama does slip, this is a Utah team that has 91 wins in the last 11 years. Only 15 teams who have spent the entirety of that tenure in the Power 5 can say that. And it's the same thing when you shrink it just to the last 4 years. Utah is still in the top 15 in wins. And one thing that's impressive, too, of them staying there in the top 4 is they did, of course, deal with not just a slew of injuries, but didn't have Cam Rising it back at all this year. So the starting quarterback, such an important part of your team, and you're still able to stay within those marks and rankings. This is a Utah football program that has been extremely consistent under Kyle Whittingham these last few years. And look, we can talk about how long he's going to stay, but at least for the immediate future, I feel like Utah football is set up to continue to succeed and continue to ascend amongst college football program if Alabama and maybe even some of these other programs have a little bit of a slippage.
I think Nick Saban's exit from Alabama applies to Utah more than Utah fans probably realize. I think Nick Saban's exit applies to the top half of the Big 12 more than most Big 12 fans realize, because what it does is it starts to cut down one of college football's, it is the greatest dynasty in college football history, especially in the modern era, and it's done. That era has ended. I read an ESPN article this week that said Saban out at Alabama ends college football's best dynasty. It ends. That's it. The catalyst, the one who built that's the one who's gone. Now, I'll be candid. If you're a Cincinnati fan, this does not apply as much to you. If you're a Baylor fan, if you're a Houston fan, there are teams that are behind the punch right now enough that it's not going to affect you in the immediate future. However, if you're a Utah, who I think is going to be at the top of the Big 12 and have a shot to go to the college football playoff, remember, 12 teams go. The Big 12 should get 3 teams in a 5+7 format, 3 of them in the college football playoff. In that case, I don't see how Utah is not one of those. So if you're a Utah, if you're in Arizona, if you are a West Virginia, which is a wild thing to say, but the amount of production they return is going to be huge, Oklahoma State or Kansas State, I think there are 7, 8 teams that could win the Big 12. For any of those, the reason that Nick Saban's departure is massive for you is because when you get to the college football playoff, the biggest domino that has been there for 15 years is gone. You don't have to topple the king. You don't have to topple the big dog. When LeBron James retires, we're going to look around the NBA and say, well, who's the guy that we compare everybody else to? Who's the one that everybody's showing up to the stadium to see? Who's the one that we have to beat at the very end? The boss level. That boss level is gone in college football. It's going to help. Now, when Utah gets the college football playoff and plays Alabama, it's not, Nick Saban in the playoff. That one's automatic. No, it's, I like Utah in this matchup. This changes it levels the playing field, changes the playing field at the top of college football. Cincinnati, hold. Utah, this is big for you.
It is. It's absolutely massive. And I think you make a fantastic point about, hey, if you get there, so often it was like, you're going to have to get through Nick Saban. And it doesn't matter if it's Jalen Milroe, Mac Jones, Jalen Hurts. It doesn't matter. Alabama always found a way to be there, and they're not. And I mean, I'm old enough, Drake, to remember when, for as crazy as it might sound to people who listen to this, be like, Alabama's not going to fall off. Mm-hmm. I recently watched The Blind Side again from a few years ago. There's a scene in The Blind Side where all of the college coaches are coming in to recruit the main character. And everyone, Nick Saban included at the time at LSU, acts like it's over when Tennessee walks in. Now, not Jeremy Pruitt, I almost messed it. Josh Heupel, has done a good job bringing them back a little bit, but by no means anymore does Tennessee walk into a room and everyone's like, oh man, like it's over. And it's the same thing. And Alabama became that, like, oh man, it's over. Nick Saban, he's also gone as well. So even recruiting wise, the ramifications that can have of divvying up some of the top talent. Obviously, those players that were going to Alabama, probably not going to be Utah guys, but there could be ramifications still of the fallout of those guys going other places that can still benefit Utah too. So it is a wide-reaching, whether you're talking about Utah's place amongst the best teams in college football, whether you're talking about Utah's place as a contender to continue to have success in the college football playoff, and even in recruiting. Everyone and so many programs and just teams benefit from Saban leaving because of what a dynasty Alabama's been. And just one other thing on how good Utah has been. When you're talking about teams that have gone back-to-back as Pac-12 championships over the course of the last 3 years. Only Michigan has three-peated as a conference champion. Even Georgia, surprisingly, we did forget the year they won the national championship the first time. They actually did lose to Bryce Young that year, and Alabama. That's what makes this Nick Saban team incredible. Even Kirby Smart, the heir apparent, they find a way to beat them too. But this Utah team went back-to-back, excluding this year, the two before. Them and Michigan are the only ones in the Power 5 now, of course, the Power 4 level to do that. So this Utah team is here to stay, and I think they're ready to continue to find that success.
I'll remind you, it was Philip Fulmer was the Tennessee coach at the time when Michael Orr was being recruited. And in the movie, they had to do some mixing and moving because I believe when the movie was produced, it was actually Houston Nutt, who was the Ole Miss coach, but he was the Arkansas coach at the time they recruited him. Ed Orgeron was the Ole Miss head coach at the time he was recruited. So he had to put the old Rebs stuff on. Houston Nutt had to dress his old Arkansas stuff. And Nick Saban came with an unbranded shirt because he was the Alabama coach playing the LSU coach of the movie, and Lou Holtz is in South Carolina. So there's your little movie tidbit there, because Philip Fulmer was going to wipe the slate clean with everybody with Michael Orr. For Utah, though, yes. And we're going to get the conversation over the course of the show about how Utah will be a team to beat. I don't know if there's the team to beat in the Big 12. You poll 15 people and say who's going to be the best team in the conference next year. Half might say Utah. A portion might say Arizona. Some are going to say Oklahoma State. Maybe a Kansas State or Kansas is thrown in there as well. So to me, Utah's been very good. I think they're going to continue to be. Did you guys hear that? Everybody clip it. Clip it. I came on this show and said Utah is going to be good. I believe that is the case. And that is why the ramifications of the Nick Saban move will be felt by Utah from the transfer portal. Because, look, players don't go play to wear Alabama across their chest. And what you just heard that sentence, you thought, that's the stupidest thing ever. Of course they do. No, they don't. Because when Nick Saban leaves, players they came to play for Nick Saban.
They already have.
Correct. Players don't go to play for, most of the Alabama recruits didn't grow up in Alabama. They grew up in Texas rooting for A&M. They grew up in Georgia rooting for the Dogs. They grew up in Florida rooting for the game. They got pulled away. This isn't about pride. They didn't go there because they rooted for Alabama their whole lives. They went there because Nick Saban recruited them. Without him, that recruiting empire is going to collapse, or at least falter enough that a school like Utah has a shot at those players. And what's more, this is just going to stir the pot across the top of college football from a player standpoint and even a coaching standpoint. If Dan Lanning goes to Alabama, which we've heard he will not, but that opens something up. And then, well, what if Kyle Whittingham gets the call from Tuscaloosa, which you won't, but we start to have these conversations of how does that coaching vacancy affect other teams at the top of college football when the power coaches, look at like a Brian Kelly when he went to LSU, and those guys start moving around to Jimbo when he went to A&M, that sends shockwaves everywhere.
Yeah, the waves of this are seismic and reach all levels of college football. And it's just going to be interesting to continue to see how it all trickles and plays out. But we mentioned Utah being set up for success even as soon as this year when it comes to them contending in the Big 12. One of the biggest moves just happened for Utah when it comes to doing exactly that, as they will have their number one pass catcher on this team, something they did not have in the 2023 season. I'm, of course, talking about Brant Kuithe. We're going to talk about what it means that he is back on this Utah football team for 2024 in one moment. But first, I want to talk to all of you about our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. The NFL regular season is wrapping up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is so easy to use. There are many different ways to bet, like live same-game parlays. Find bets in the new Explore tab. There's also a place you can go to make a parlay in the Parlay Hub. It's the best way to find popular parlays, and there's so much more. So you can visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL. Drake, any playoff matchups you got your eyes on this week in the NFL slate?
I have not looked at a single one. I am college football and only I don't know if I could tell you who the Packers and the Packers and the Cowboys. That's it. That's all I know.
I knew that. That's actually I'm so glad you brought that up because that's exactly the one I had brought up here with the Cowboys currently favored by 7. And I know there's some hype around Jordan Love and the whole past omens of like, oh, the Packers beat the Cowboys, but I would put my money on the Cowboys to cover that. I like this team that they're rolling in as well. It'll be weird to see Mike McCarthy beat the Packers as well. That's something that'll be strange to see. But if you guys are liking all those NFL playoff lines, make sure you head over to FanDuel Sportsbook. Also want to talk to all of you about another sponsor of today's episode of Locked On Utes. It's our friends at UCCU. Learn and earn the UCCU mobile banking app that pays your entire family to learn about money. Kids look to parents to become more financially literate. Parents, they don't always know the answers. Learn and earn breaks down financial topics into fun, bite-sized educational games like quizzes and trivia. Every time a family member completes a topic, they earn points that can occur and can be redeemed for gift cards to stores like Amazon, Apple, Sephora, Walmart, Nike, and more. There is age-appropriate content for every member of the family. You compete against each other and track their progress on leaderboards. Learn and earn is inside the UCCU mobile banking app, so you can play it anytime, anywhere. The more you play, the more you learn. And the more you learn, the more you earn. Learn and earn, part of UCCU's award-winning B-Money Smart Youth Banking Program, helping kids, teens, and parents have fun while becoming more financially literate together. UCCU, love where you bank. All right, Drake. We just talked a lot about how Utah could be in a position to move up with a potential Alabama downfall if it comes to the Crimson Tide. And one of the reasons we could see maybe Utah potentially starting that next year is because of how good this team can be, particularly now. The biggest question about Utah has been the passing game. Can you be a more dynamic offense than what you were last year? And the answer to that was always going to be yes, with Cam Rising coming back, who is obviously one of the best quarterbacks in college football, returning based on what he's done in the past. We already laid out not a lot of guys back-to-back conference championships. And I know he's getting up there in age, but still a guy who's capable of executing. And we just saw a lot of older quarterbacks have a lot of success this past season. But he didn't have his number one guy this year. That was Brant Kuithe. It took a while for him to put it out, but Brant Kuithe is officially coming back. When you are talking about Brant Kuithe, you are talking about a guy who the last time he was healthy for an entire season had over 600 yards. He had over 600 yards with not just Cam Rising, but all the way back in 2019. Did it with Tyler Huntley too. And yes, he only had 206 yards in 2022, but he only got to play in 4 games. 3 of those were absolute blowouts, and one of those was against the Florida Gators, where he went over 100 yards in the game. And outside Anthony Richardson, looked like the best player on the field. This is one of the best tight ends in college football, and Utah getting him back is absolutely massive, Drake.
Brant Kuithe is 24 years old. By the end of next season, he will be approaching his 25th birthday. He is getting close to being able to rent a car. He's close.
He's older than you and I, correct?
Yes, almost combined, I think.
Yes.
He is almost off his parents' insurance. He is old, but in college football this year, when you looked at who went to New York for the Heisman, I don't think Brant Kuithe will, but those guys were old. That's the trend of college football now. The old guys are winning. And it's the reason, this is a fun little aside here, it's the reason I think most teams are opting to go with the fourth-year guy from Western Kentucky to move into their program rather than the 18-year-old out of high school. It makes sense, and Brant Kuithe is a part of that. Now, there is no conversation to me about Brant Kuithe without talking about Cam Rising. Those two things work in tandem with one another. If one is off, if one doesn't exist, I think the other is rendered much less effective. Not ineffective, but much less effective, right? Brant Kuithe is going to be the favorite target. He should be. If Cam Rising is 100% healthy, Utah's the most dangerous team in the Big 12, the most dangerous team in the Big 12. Here is the big problem that I think a lot of people are going to overlook, but we have to, objectively, as someone who covers all teams, we have to understand these are two guys in Cam Rising and Brant Kuithe who haven't played football in a long, long time. Is that going to affect? Look, hey, Michael Penix Jr., same thing. He didn't play a lot of football. He was hurt every year, came back and could have won the Heisman Trophy. I think Cam Rising can do that. But I was holding out on Michael Penix Jr. through week 5 because I didn't know yet. Like, anybody can get hurt. I'm not waiting on one of the two to get hurt. I'm waiting to see, are they 100%? Do they bring the same moxie? Do they bring the same stuff? Do they bring the same dangerous aura to the Utah offense that was so needed? I think Utah, I know Utah is better than their record this season. I know they are if healthy. That's not an argument. It's not an argument, but it's that if right there that I circle and I can't erase until I see it, until I see these two guys going at it. I know what the potential is. I know what the ceiling is, but is it going to be their game one? We don't know that.
You're absolutely right. As much as and the only thing I was pushing back.
Hear that? Locked On Utes fans?
I was pushing back on early when you were saying Cam needed Brant. I was just saying that Cam actually just needs an elite tight end because when it wasn't Brant, it was Dalton Kincaid. Right. Which is where we can get into some of the tight end depth that Utah has. It's going to be really exciting.
And I don't think Dalton Kincaid's going to be suiting up for Utah next season.
Unfortunately not. He's playing really well for the Buffalo Bills.
He is. Yeah.
So it's been fun to watch that. But when you're talking about Cam, it is crazy to think like he has not played a football game since January 1st, 2023. So by the time the season rolls around, that's like, whoa. And Utah's first game is August 29th. That means if Brant Kuithe plays in that game, which he absolutely should, obviously, all the health concerns at that point should be out the window. Yeah. Brant will have not played in a game in almost 2 years. That's an incredibly long time. And there will be questions then, okay, how fast, how explosive, how all these things, how is he going to do? So those are big what ifs that are going to be very interesting to see. But you also made a good point bringing up a Michael Penix, right? He came back from those injuries and looked exceptionally good. I think Cam and Brant both should be able to do that, but it's going to be interesting to see, Drake.
Me, front row. I'm raising my hand.
Yeah, I got you.
I don't think it's crazy to believe that there could be a Michael Penix Jr. kind of leap this year at the quarterback position for Utah. That is not something that there were some
compared
people
to what they had. Yeah.
Some people would be like, I don't know what Cam Rising could be, what Michael Penix was. I think he could be better. I think he could be, because
now you're going to make the Utah fans turn on me in a second.
At the peak of where we saw Cam Rising, I think is better than the peak that we saw from Michael Penix Jr. at Indiana. I think it is.
Indiana. Yeah.
But that's what we had of Michael. You know, we saw him in Indiana, thought, oh, what could he be if he stayed healthy? I think Cam Rising showed us more before getting hurt than Michael Penix Jr. did. So not only is this a very logical comparison, I think Cam Rising could be better. I'm just saying it. I'm just saying that. I'm just putting it out there.
See, you're doing a lot of good work today to put yourself on the good side of Utah fans. I want to give you that first before I say this. I think the big difference I look to is just the massive difference in Kalen DeBoer, Washington, those receivers, where Penix was at Indiana, then going there versus Utah in a similar system. Utah also they're going to need to add some more receivers if they want to have that kind of a thing. But this is a guy we've seen in Cam Rising who went toe to toe with Caleb Williams, has had big moments, made big plays, made big throws. So I definitely see what you're talking about in terms of having just an incredible season. What's awesome about Brant coming back is, look, I can't tell every single college tight end room what they look like. But I'm going to be honest, I have it hard pressed to believe there is a group of 3 tight ends in college football right now with a proven track record better than Brant Kuithe already said what he did. Carson Ryan comes over from UCLA. He had 13 catches with 205 yards with Dante Moore and all those other Bruins as quarterbacks. Dante Moore was so not good, basically. He agreed to be a backup at Oregon for this year, so I think that's worth bearing in mind. And Landon King, I know he only had just over 150 yards, but he barely got to play the first half of the year because Thomas Yasmin was in there. And obviously Utah, just in general, passing game-wise, was limited with Bryson Barnes, as we kind of discussed too. So when you're talking about these three tight ends, we could be talking about a situation, once again, we're back in 2021, Kuithe and Kincaid, both over 500 yards, finished first and third in receiving yards. I think some combination of Kuithe, Ryan, and King could do that, and I expect all three of these guys to have a legit chance to be Utah's top five or top six of receiving leaders for Utah. This is a fantastic tight end room, and no one has used tight ends in college football, or I shouldn't say no one, but very few schools have used tight end better as well as Utah has in the last few years. So I'm really fired up about the potential of these tight ends in Andy Ludwig's offense.
Jared Wiley, TCU, gone. Ben Sinnott, Kansas State, gone. Isaac Rex, BYU, gone. Cole Taylor's back for West Virginia. He's going to be pretty good. But yeah, I there's no argument. The best tight ends, the best of the best in the Big 12 are all going away, aside from maybe Cole Taylor. And Utah could boast three of them. Now the struggle is you can't really put three tight ends on the field at the same time. So you're gonna have to try to piece together who's gonna be out there where. But I really do. I played tight end when I played football. So I have an affinity for the position. First one in, last one out. These are the kind of guys you let date your daughter. They play the game the right way. The tight end is always that guy. You're just like, you know what? That's a football player right there.
Yeah.
It's the flashy fullback is what it is. And if you've got three of them, including Brant Kuithe, who could be he could be a Mackey Award winner. When you have that in your arsenal for Utah, I don't think you need. Now, I know you and I talked off the air about whether or not Utah goes and gets an additional receiver to try to anchor the offense. If you use the tight end strategically enough, you don't have. If you can develop not necessarily a ground and pound, but a pro style. Look at the Kansas City Chiefs. They're still going to the playoffs. They have one pass catcher, and it's the tight end, Travis Kelce. I don't know if anybody on Utah's roster is going to be Travis Kelce, but if utilized in that way, if you take, and a lot of high school coaches do this, they say, all right, here's the group of athletes I've been given this year. Here's where I tweak the offense to meet where our program is. If we don't have the big bodies, we don't ground and pound, we throw the football, and vice versa. For Utah, understand your personnel, utilize tight end, and things will go well for the Utes.
Yep, it's going to be exciting to see if Utah is able to do that, and the type of year that Bram and Cam can have together. Going to be interesting to see how it all plays out, and their connection is going to be paramount to Utah's success in 2024. And when you're talking about this Utah team's success in 2024, there's a lot of sites that have been giving Utah a lot of hype, and that is something I want to dive into with all of you in one moment. Drake, did you want to add one more thing, or are you saying?
Nope, I'm just saying I'm one of those sites.
Okay, good. Yes, let's make sure that is what we're going to do. Last time you raised your hand, you had something to add, so you're throwing me off. We're going to be
for a loop.
Yeah, we're going to be diving into all of that in one moment. But first, I want to talk to all of you about another sponsor of today's episode of Locked On Utes. It is our glorious friends at Game Time. You shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. They have great last-minute deals, all-in-price views from your seats, and their best price guarantee. Game Time truly takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. They have fantastic features like last-minute tickets, flash deals, zone deals. It's super easy to navigate the website too, and they have views from your seat so you know exactly what kind of a deal you're getting when you make this ticket investment. Their low-price guarantee, event cancellation, and job loss protection are all critical pieces. I mentioned that low price guarantee. It's called the Game Time guarantee, and it means you'll always get the best price if you find tickets in the same section and row for less. Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So you can download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON with the L and the O in that capitalized for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Drake, Utah is getting a lot of love in the preseason awards, and it's not just by me just randomly saying this team is going to be a top 25 team. It's people smarter than me, because for those of you who are just listening on podcast, I just noticed that I said Utah football top 25 in 2025, basically in our little show rundown graphic. So I apologize for that gaffe, but people smarter than me at Bleacher Report, ESPN, and The Athletic, Stuart Mandel all have Utah listed inside the top 15 for way too early 2024. I think it's absolutely fair for a lot of the reasons we've discussed. Cam Rising, the tight end depth, an elite staple of running backs, even when you lose Jaquindon Jackson, an offensive line that still returns 3 starters. Yes, the receiver position is a question mark, but look around college football. A lot of other teams have big question marks too. The defense, the front 7, yes, you lose your best pass rusher, but you are well equipped to replace him. All 3 of your best linebackers are back. And while the secondary, you need to retool it, Utah's done exactly that in the transfer portal and attacked it well. Factor in the Kyle Whittingham consistently factor, and I think Utah absolutely deserves their ranking in these way too early top 25 lists in 2024.
Can I make you a little sad and then happy?
Sure. You've done, but yeah, you do both usually. So yeah.
Utah lost 5 games in 2023, 4 games in 22, 4 games in 21, en route to Pac-12 championships. In 2019, they lost 3 games. This is a program that does lose ball games. They lose multiple ball games. That's what Kyle Whittingham has done. However, they still find a freaking way to win in the postseason. That postseason being Pac-12 championships at this point.
Not bowl games. Not bowl games. We know that. Not bowl games.
But the Pac-12 championship. To me, Utah seems like the perfect embodiment of this. Everybody hold on to your seats. The Utah Utes go 9-3. Maybe 10-2. And what you're hearing right now, you're going, well, that doesn't sound like a top 10 team. But wait, partner, that is good enough in this Big 12 to get you to the Big 12 championship. And then all you have to do is win to go to the college football playoff. The champion of the Big 12 gets in no matter what. And that is where Utah will wreak havoc. And you'll go, remember that year Utah had 3 losses and won the national championship? Because that's just kind of what Utah does. Right? You think like, they lost enough game. They're not going to win the Pac-12 championship this year. Maybe. And then somehow the chips fall perfectly in Utah's favor and they win. I have them at number 1 on my way too early 2024 power rankings. Kansas at 2, Arizona at 3, West Virginia a lot back at 4, Iowa State at 5. Now, these are way too early. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do that most people aren't going to do. ESPN, CBS, those guys, they're not going to tweak that in a week. Mine's going to change by next Monday. Mine's going to change by 2 Mondays from now, right? As I monitor the transfer portal, who's in, who's out. And also, I'm going to look deeper than just, Utah's 11th in the Big 12 in transfer portal rankings. They don't have to be top 5. Cincinnati needs to be. They need a roster overhaul to compete in the Big 12. Utah doesn't. There are some teams at the bottom of the power rankings when it comes to transfer portal that need to be. There's positive attrition. 5 guys left. They probably didn't need to be there anyway. And then you bring in the pieces that you need. Utah's in a place where they are good enough for that problem to happen, to not be a top 5 transfer portal team in the conference. They shouldn't be because they're such a sturdy program. Utah at number 1. The defense is good enough. I think the defense will end up being the best in the Big 12 because the returning players. And as long as it's not injury Mageddon again, Utah is in a great spot in the Big 12 next year, especially with Cam Rising at the helm.
That was, fantastically said. Hey, you like I said, you've done a lot of goodwill today. I think Utah fans will be loving on you.
I always do goodwill. It's the one thing. They're going to hear one thing, and then I can't believe you said that. I'm done listening. And then they drown out that I like Utah.
Now, unfortunately, you might lose some Big 12 listeners because I did notice that you are drinking from an Arkansas cup on this podcast. I got to out you there.
I'm a Southwest Conference guy. I'm a big Southwest Conference fan. I spread the love.
But I absolutely agree with everything you were saying about Utah. And I think the one thing, too, is like we said, if you look at Utah, I could be like, hey, they need to fill some things in the secondary. They could use a receiver. The offensive line was a little shaky at the end. But but we could do that with every single college football team. Even
and can I be honest? I'm not even using the cases for why Utah is going to lose 2 or 3 games. It's just by virtue of what Kyle Whittingham has kind of done. And the schedule's it's not even that brutal for Utah. I also think it's a combination of Kyle Whittingham has lost 2 or 3 games. That's just what happens. Number 2, the Big 12 is going to be nuts, man. It's going to be nuts.
It is going to be crazy.
I could see Colorado. They're going to kill me. I could see Colorado going 4-8 with one of those wins being against Utah. I don't know if they.
I could see Colorado going better than 4-8. Actually, I'm a little. I mean, they got the best quarterback in the conference to me. As much as I love Cam.
Also true. I just think that there's that level of parity in the conference that Utah could go 11-1 and still lose to a 5-7 team. Don't scream at me. It's just what happens here. Welcome to the Big 12.
Well, especially when that, like you said, that one-win team is the guy who's, as of this moment, the first overall pick in the 2025 NFL draft. A lot has to happen between them, but that's how good Shedeur Sanders is. So, I think there's a lot that's going to happen. It's going to be really interesting to see. I love the position that Utah's in. They need to do a couple more things to tweak, but with how much returning talent they have and how much talent they still have from a team that won a conference championship, which is something not a lot of teams in college football can say in general.
They
right
did
now.
It's like a weird little like they just froze. They froze that conference championship team in time. Like nobody move. Everybody's getting hurt. We're all coming back. We're getting the band back together after a year. I love it.
It's kind of like the 2020 season. That was such a weird one for Utah in general. But like, if you look at the Jake
5
Bentley,
games, right?
5 games, COVID, it just didn't work. Like it was a mess. It was a disaster. But then if you like freeze that and go, man, the Tyler Huntley to Cam Rising transition was pretty nice. Now you skip over the part where it was Jake Bentley and your former guy, Charlie Brewer, too.
Yeah, don't forget Charlie Brewer.
Oh, trust me, Utah fans are not unable to. It was my my first ever Utah BYU rivalry game. I went there and saw Charlie Brewer. And
BYU fans love Charlie Brewer.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure they do. And hey, speaking of Utah fans, Drake, I think Utah fans will be loving you. And if Utah fans want some more of you after today's episode, where should they head over to?
I'm going to be honest, 10% of you, I don't think I like. The other 90% are awesome and make me want to like Utah. But the other 10%, you guys stop being mean. At Drake C. Toll on Twitter. That's it.
Make sure you guys check out Drake on Locked On Big 12 as well. Drake, always great having you on.
JT, believe it or not, it's a pleasure.
That's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On Utes. A lot to talk about on next week's shows, and we look forward to seeing you then.